All right.
You are.
Thank you. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome members of the public here and that are present and electronically. Welcome everybody. This is a revised agenda of the regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. The opening of the council meeting, we acknowledge with gratitude that we live, work, and play on the traditional unceded territory of the Walraven Nation. People have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Walraven one time immemorial. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to?
There will be on-table items that we found earlier today.
Yeah, thank you. All right, everybody okay with the agenda? If so, we'll just approve the agenda by consensus. Move right into public comments.
Okay, we have 3 this evening, starting with Anton Van Walraven regarding the Woodfibre LNG presentation.
All right, welcome, Anton.
Thank you, Aaron. Welcome everyone in person. Nice.
Yes, it is.
The IPCC, the International Energy Agency, the World Meteorological Organization are calling on countries not to build new fossil fuel plants because we are in a climate emergency. Why do we still have to listen to the fossil fuel companies trying to do just that? What you will hear tonight from Woodfibre Energy spokesperson is that Woodfibre will be a transition fuel in the interim transitioning to renewable, a lower emission transition fuel to reduce coal use in other parts of the world, and that projects like Woodfibre will offset some of the 60 to 80 coal-fired power plants currently planned in China. If you make such claims, you have to prove that is true. Woodfibre Energy has always seen itself as a solitary project in the north end of the Athabascan Sound. That's why the company's 2015 environmental submission included only direct emissions from the facility at 129 kiloton CO2 equivalent per year. This amount was still used by Mental 341, it's advised consulting firm, in 2020 in a briefing note on this topic to Woodfibre LNG. Even though the project went through a fundamental design change to drop in seawater cooling for air cooling, which will lead to higher energy use. Of course, you cannot make the leap using only direct emissions of your facility to claim that your fossil fuel will emit less than coal in a different country. You would miserably fail for your physics exam. The only correct way to compare to fuel is through a life cycle analysis of both products. For greenhouse gas emissions, that means analyzing the life cycle of the 2 fuels by including all emissions from the extraction process to the final moment of the use of the fuel. Woodfibre Energy has never done this. But Earth scientist David Yu, who worked for the Geological Survey of Canada for 33 years, did in 2016 and again in 2020. And he found that BC Energy would emit 27% more greenhouse gases for the first 20 years than coal used in 46% super efficient coal-fired power plants that are built in China. That 27% more translated to 24% more for Woodfibre Energy because it used electricity for the methane liquefaction process. And liquefaction makes up 7% of the total life cycle emissions. Also, the argument cannot be made that this project would be a solution for European countries looking for alternatives to Russian gas right now, as it would take years to become operational. EU Executive Vice President Franc, responsible for the EU energy policy, made it clear 2 days ago when he asked on a Dutch current political affairs program Buitenhof. Multiple times, Timmermans stressed that EU countries should not invest in fossil fuel projects, although what's happening in Ukraine, but make the leap to renewables instead. And that is not only the correct approach in the climate crisis, it's the only one. And therefore, Woodfibre Energy cannot be built.
Thank you, Anton.
Next, we have a trio. We have Tasha, Roman, Simran, Sari, and Emma Kingsland, and it's regarding the Year of the Salish Sea Initiative. And they're on Zoom.
Hello.
Oh,
Hi, my
okay.
name is Emma, and I am a resident of Metro Vancouver. And I would like to first acknowledge that I am calling from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. I would like to thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them, along with the waters and all that is above and below. I'm here today with Tasha Romaine and Simran Sarai, and we are the three organizers of the Year of the Salish Sea, which is a youth-led initiative that emerged from Simon Fraser University's Semester in Dialogue program, which we were all a part of in the fall 2022 semester. And I'm speaking today to express my support of the Year of the Salish Sea motion. The Year of the Salish Sea will run from June 8th, 2022 to June 7th, 2023, and is an effort that aims to bring together local First Nations, municipalities, organizations, and individuals in the Salish Sea ecosystem region to strengthen existing efforts that work towards a healthy Salish Sea through public engagement and the spreading of stewardship and educational opportunities. And we can see how the Year of the Salish Sea aligns with existing climate action work on Bowen Island. The Year of the Salish Sea in Bowen Island would join the momentum that has already been started in the cities of Vancouver and Richmond, the town of Gibsons, and the Islands Trust Council for ongoing stewardship and marine education efforts and to generate excitement within the municipality of Bowen Island. A major aim of the initiative is public engagement. A survey done in 2019 by the CDOC Society found that only 15% of British Columbians surveyed could identify the Salish Sea on a map. And we believe that encouraging individuals to build personal connections and memories with the Salish Sea will help coastal communities become aware of the footprint they leave on the sea and learn how they can support existing conservation and stewardship work. So in-person family-friendly coastal events that celebrate the Salish Sea or a documentary film screening festival could be held on Bowen Island during the year and are just some of the events that we picture happening throughout the Year of the Salish Sea. And we would also like to connect and invite the many stakeholders and organizations we have worked with to facilitate events and public engagement opportunities. Finally, we are going to be creating an events calendar on our website that will hold all of the Salish Sea related events that our partner organizations and municipalities will be holding throughout the year to provide the public one space where they can see all the different opportunities they have to come engage with Salish Sea related events. So thank you very much for taking the time to hear us speak today.
Thank you very much. That's a tremendous initiative, and best of luck with it going forward. And we're certainly willing to help you out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Anne Franc Ferriere regarding Woodfibre LNG.
Welcome in.
Good evening. Your worship and councillors. My husband and I have already given negative feedback about the proposed Woodfibre LNG project in 2016, and our opinion has not changed since then. I will give you a letter of the copy that we wrote in 2016 to the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency. Today, I will concentrate my critique on the impact of transiting of the planned 40 return trips Suezmax class LNG tankers per year. That is 6 to 7 transits a month. At the time, discussions took place in the paper and other media. The tankers are so big that they dwarf the BC ferry to Nanaimo. The tankers are 300-meter long. That is the distance from here to Artisan Square. The height is more than 100 meters, the drop from here to Bitch. Can you visualize this? And it is planned to block all marine traffic 2 hours ahead of the crossing and 2 hours after the crossing, some 2 to 5 hours to for all traffic around Horseshoe Bay. This will keep Bowen Islanders hostage to the LNG Woodfibre for 4 to 5 hours, 6 to 7 times a month. How could that be allowed? We will be cut off from the mainland for several hours a month, putting jobs, commuters on the mainland in jeopardy, ambulance traffic along with medical appointments, etc., etc. This is simply nonsense. We also have to consider the reported climate changes. We are all aware of the high king tides that landed the barge on rocks in English Bay. It is still stuck there. Not so long ago, the force of the Squamish winds sank Sewell windbreaker in Horseshoe Bay with all the pleasure crafts parked on it. The winds in Howe Sound can be so strong and so unpredictable that Environment Canada published in 1998 a report about the winds that are recorded at Pan Rock. Not only are the winds very strong, but they also turn on a dime. The name of the pamphlet is The Wind Came All Ways. Let also mention that the narrowest point in Howe Sound is 1 kilometer wide, 1,000 meters. Each of those huge tankers will be accompanied by 4 tugboats. Do you think they will be able to handle an abrupt 100-kilometer Squamish wind while negotiating that narrow pass? That will happen if such a boat, what will happen if such a boat lands on rocks in the Port of Cove? Will that result in closing all the traffic along the Sea to Sky Highway indefinitely? The Bowen Island Council has previously said no to the Woodfibre LNG project, and you should remind them that no is no. Such a project will simply be a calamity for all Bowen Islanders. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Okay. Well, on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything from the consent agenda that they have any clarification on? Anything at all? Anything? Okay, then the consent agenda will be adopted by consensus. We'll move on. And right into the delegations. Julia Diamond, Senior Manager, Government Relations, Chris Reed, VP Human Resources, Christian Ruloba, Marine Manager, and Laura Prosco, Stakeholder Relations Advisor. Woodfibre LNG, are they there? We're a little bit early, eh? Oh, perfect, there you are.
Yeah, I am. Hi there.
Hi.
I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, and please let me know if there's any issues with it coming through.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to pass it over to you for presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you very much, Mayor and councillors, for welcoming our delegation and providing us with the opportunity to give an update on our project since we last spoke, which I believe was several years ago. My name is Julia Diamond. I am the Senior Manager for Government Relations with Woodfibre. And as a company who is building a regional industrial project that will create jobs and economic opportunities for the Sea to Sky region, while having a minimal environmental footprint, we want to be open and transparent in how we will do that. So thank you for having us. I'm speaking to you tonight from the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share some information tonight on how our project is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. I'm also joined by Chris Reed, Vice President of HR, who is a resident of Bowen Island, and Christian, our Marine Manager, and Laura Prosco, who's Stakeholder Relations Advisor and lives and works in Squamish. So in terms of an agenda, I would like to start by sharing a bit about our corporate vision and commitments as a project to supporting emissions reduction, demonstrating partnerships with Indigenous peoples, developing a workforce that maximizes local people and reflects the diversity of our province. Then we will share how our project is committed to working with other levels of government and what we are doing to prepare for construction to begin next year. Then we're happy to take any questions that you have. So Woodfibre LNG is committed to a quintuple bottom line approach that produces positive results first and foremost for the community, then the country, the climate, the customer, and finally the company. We do this by working with the community of Squamish and local First Nations to ensure that the project has socioeconomic benefits that are positive, such as family supporting jobs and revenues that make reinvestments in the community by government and by our company possible. We see our project as one that will be ready and well positioned to support the global energy transition, help offset global emissions, accelerate global energy security while prioritizing environmental and human safety. LNG is very safe, and in the 6-year history of the industry, there has never been a loss of containment. We are taking extra precautions to make sure that our operations are as safe as possible and participate in government initiatives such as term pull that will assess a worst case scenario to safety associated with shipping and navigation. This helps us be overly prepared on everything related to the environment and human safety. Finally, we are committed to community goodwill through donations, sponsorships, and partnership initiatives with not-for-profit entities and charities in the Squamish Nation. I also want to remind that we have all of our environmental approvals in place for our project. I understand that most of you know that our project will be powered by renewable electricity. We pay the industrial rate for our electricity, which is the same as every other industrial tenant in the province. The facility will be the second electrified or e-drive facility in North America, and it will produce the lowest emissions of any LNG facility in the world. Our emissions profile is anticipated to be 1/10 of a comparable facility because we will be electrified, and we intend to minimize this profile even further through innovative cutting-edge technologies related to emissions reduction and avoidance wherever feasible. Our LNG, when liquefied and re-liquefied and used to offset coal-fired electricity sourced in Asia, will displace global emissions, which are equivalent to taking 700,000 vehicles.
This is a spokesperson for the fucking outfit.
We are developing a net zero pathway that will align with provincial and federal climate targets and commitments to be net zero by 2050. The details of this plan are confidential at this time, and we will share information publicly as we progress and consult on the plan. As you know, we are the first company in Canada to have an Indigenous government outside of a treaty as an environmental regulator. This is an inaugural arrangement that we have with Squamish Nation as our regulator. We have meaningful impact benefit agreements in place with Squamish Nation and are nearing completion of an agreement with the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, which includes provisions around preferential jobs and procurement opportunities for these nations, as well as meaningful training opportunities to ensure that nation members are well positioned to be the first in line for those opportunities. These agreements also include an equity option, and these discussions are underway. The agreements are governed by a joint committee of both Woodfibre and nation representatives, and there are several working groups in place to progress the commitments, including environmental commitments such as protection of natural habitats and wildlife on site. Our project will provide up to 700 jobs during peak construction, which is anticipated for 2025. These are mostly trades jobs in areas such as pipe fitting, electrical, heavy equipment operation, etc. For the operations phase, which will start in 2027, the project will provide approximately 100 stable, well-paying jobs for years to come. And I mentioned that we will prioritize local hiring, which means workers from Squamish Nation, the local area, including Bowen Island, the rest of BC, and Canada. As part of our local development plan and diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, which are both in development, we will curate and deliver targeted initiatives to maximize the capacity of women and other underrepresented groups to participate in the project, including at a management level. We are very fortunate right now to have a female president of our company and to have people of color and women represented at all levels of the organization. In terms of relationships with other governments, I've touched on most of these points already, but I think it's important to reiterate that we do have positive working relationships in place with all levels of government and are committed to being open and transparent about the project with municipalities. We engage very regularly with the District of Squamish on regulatory and permitting affairs, our environmental management plans that are required by our environmental assessment certificates, and on ways that local businesses can participate and benefit from the project. We recently did a similar presentation to the District of Squamish Mayor and Council, and our president meets regularly with the mayor. Our website contains a webpage where any local or regional business interested in being involved in the project can sign up, and all of those are vetted and shared with our prime subcontractor or prime contractor. In terms of a project update, we issued a notice to proceed to McDermott International just over a month ago, and we have $500 million approved spending for this year. Again, we intend to maximize this to the extent possible on local contractors for works and services to prepare for construction. Many of you are well aware that our project is located on an old industrial mill site, and we have spent significant dollars, $12 million to date, to clean up the site in preparation for construction. We have done this by removing 4,000 creosote piles from the foreshore and recycling 12,000 cubic meters of old stockpiled concrete, for example. We have provided payments to Squamish Nation in support of activities related to procurement, employment, and training, and these will continue for the next 40 years, which is the duration of our export license. And I think I touched on most of the other points already in terms of the plans that are underway. For pre-construction works, we have over $25 million approved to prepare for construction, which includes removal of concrete slabs, decommissioning the rail line, tapping the landfill of materials from the previous mill, which will enhance environmental performance and improve water quality. We're also preparing to replace the passenger dock on site to ensure that it is safe and ready for workers who come onto site, which I think, as you know, is only accessible by boat. The last slide is to reiterate the point that I made previously, which is we do want to be transparent in how our project is progressing and creating opportunities for Squamish and the local communities that border it. For Bowen, this primarily means jobs and procurement opportunities for years to come. We currently have over 10 corporate jobs posted, and Chris is a solid example of how the project can provide meaningful employment opportunities, including for the residents of Bowen Island. As I mentioned, our project is a demonstration of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, including Squamish Nation, whose traditional territory stretches Howe Sound in Bowen Island. We do have a community donation and sponsorship program that targets nonprofit and charities in the Squamish area. We will be undertaking information sessions in Squamish to ensure that the viewpoints are reflected in our operational plans, such as environmental management plans and workforce accommodation plans. Our current accommodation plan is to facilitate a floating hotel or floatel at the site, which was a decision made based on consultation with the community and others to minimize pressure on community services and infrastructure. These plans and initiatives are being coordinated with Fortis BC, but any details about the Fortis BC project or pipeline would have to be directed to their staff. So thank you very much for your time. We are happy to take any questions now or to come to Bowen Island at a later date and meet with you and your constituents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julia, for that presentation. Questions? Anybody have questions, David?
Sure. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I've got questions in a couple of areas, one around safety and the other one on climate change. And I appreciate that you've got the electric drive, which is obviously an improvement over many other production systems. But my question is around your, and I don't remember the number that you gave, but it's significant reduction in greenhouse gases by displacing coal. But my question is around whether you have done a full analysis, a life cycle analysis of the emissions from your project. So that means an analysis of all the upstream emissions from the production of the gas, including fugitive methane, which you know obviously is a serious issue. And then if you have compared that to whatever contracts you have in China that will be displacing coal, and compared to the coal emissions. In other words, if you've done a full analysis of that, and if you could share it, yeah, please.
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. I did mention that we are developing our net zero pathway, and one of the first stages of the pathway is to have a third-party firm validate our emissions. It's scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So scope 1 and 2 are the emissions that we control as a facility. Scope 3 would include things upstream and downstream. So we are doing that scenario analysis right now in terms of the tonnage of carbon emissions that are produced by not just the facility itself, but all of the upstream production, downstream transport. So we do anticipate being able to make that plan public once we do the analysis. Your second part of the question around the comparison or how the project offsets coal-fired facilities in Asia. Yes, that is also part of the exercise that is underway in terms of the global emissions offset and avoidance strategy as part of the net zero pathway.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Would you be able to share that in the next while? Like, I'd really be interested in seeing that.
Sure, I will take that away and discuss with the team here on what can be shared. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. My second question just around safety, and I'm wondering about your risk assessment, the analysis that presumably you've done on risk assessment, and what your response plan, how your response plan addresses that, and thinking of risk, of course, around the plant itself and the area around Squamish, but also as you're traveling through this area past our island.
Thank you for that, Christian. May I direct that question to you?
Yeah, hi. Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Yes, I can answer specifically on the shipping portion. As part of the Turnbull assessment that we carried out together with Transport Canada and the Turnbull Review Committee, we carried out a full risk assessment of not only the area crossing the Horseshoe Bay and the Howe Sound, but everything from J Buoy all the way to Woodfibre side. In each sections of the trip, we evaluate the potential risks, what the probabilities are, what the scenarios are. Based on those results, we come out with mitigation measures that allow us to reduce that risk to the minimum possible. Some of those measures, for example, in passage to Bowen Island, we have the vessel's speed reduced to about 8 knots, arrival to 10, go to 8, 4, and 2 when you arrive to the Woodfibre side, which allow the vessels to be sufficiently slow to take any action is required. In addition to that, as an additional measure of safety, we have 2 tugs which will be escorting the vessel on the way in and the way out to make sure that even in the rare case that the vessel has an issue, these tugs will be able to take action, not only for the ships, but also for other vessels around the area. So there's multiple barriers that we have put in, safety barriers we call, that reduces the level of risk to the minimum possible. On the area of the LNG plant, which I'm less versed on, but I know that we are part of the Oil and Gas Commission permitting requirement. We will present to them what we call a safety case. The safety case is a risk assessment of the full operation of the plant that includes the design in which it identifies all the potential risk, potential scenarios, and all the different mitigation measures that reduces the risk of such an event to as far as practically possible, which is a technical term for a very, very, very low probability. So, and that will be presented to the Oil and Gas Commission for their approval in due time. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. So those will be public documents? Or?
Sorry, can you say again?
They would be, thank you very much for that. Would they be public documents?
I'm not sure. I will need to check on that. If I believe so, but we will need to check on that. But I believe that all these permits will be. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Those are my questions.
Anybody else have any queries? Allison?
So, an estimated time of actually being in operation for the plant? How many years are we talking about?
Yeah, so estimated operations is to start in 2027, and we have a 40-year export license.
And then there's been a lot of
40
talk.
fucking years, they're not gonna have a problem, right?
They have a 40-year expert
Yeah,
license.
Sorry, I've muted them a few times, so I'll send them a message.
And I guess my other question is the size of the vessels that will be transporting the LNG. People here are concerned about the size. Are they going to be your ships or other shipping line ships?
Yeah, I can answer that question. Currently, we are working with a company called BP that will be working with us in the supply of the ships. The LNG carriers will be in the area of the 280, 290 meters long and 40 meters wide. So your question was whether the ship will be ours?
Well, you said you're working with BP, so.
Yes, and yeah, so what we do is we vet the vessels, and the vessels have to be pre-approved before they come to our terminal.
And have you decided times of day for transit, or people are concerned about interruptions to the ferry service?
Yeah, so as part of the terminal, we've done a traffic assessment, where we identified all the areas where there's traffic conflict between our vessels and other users. And some of them are BC ferries. And what we do is we do not interfere with the traffic of the vessels. What we do is we have a constant communication with BC ferries to coordinate the passage of our vessels and their vessels without interruption. So we do not intend to interrupt their schedules.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, just a point of clarification and then a generalized comment. One is, how many ships a week are we talking? What's the rough number?
We're looking at one ship every 10 or 8 days, between 8 to 10 days.
Okay,
One ship.
3/4 of a ship a week. Okay, good. And, I hear, we've even brought up reconciliation and Salish Sea and environmental stuff. Just prior to your presentation, you had a presentation from a group that wants us to commemorate a year of protecting the Salish Sea, from a lot of industrialization. So we sort of, we get sort of the similar messaging about, working with bands and reconciliation and environmental protection, but very sort of different projects coming before us. One is really looking at not having more industry in house sound, and obviously this is an industry. Any comment on that? Because that's sort of what we're struggling with as well. Is the two seem to not be seem to work well together. Let's put it that way.
Sure. I would just say, and I've tried to make the point through the presentation, that we think that our project can do all of it and protect the environment, enhance the environment on site, contributing to emissions reductions and supporting global energy security and the global energy transition in a way that is socially responsible, minimizes impact to the environment, creates jobs for British Columbians, creates revenues for government, and has positive benefits for communities for generations to come and young people like me.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I just have one question and then a couple of comments. My question is, when will your environmental assessment, environmental assessment studies done and your permit allowed?
Our environmental assessment certificates, we have had many amendments over the years, but they were initially granted, I believe, in 2016. I will double check on the date exactly and get back to you. And as there are many conditions in those environmental assessment certificates that must be met in order to us proceeding with construction. I spoke a lot about the environmental management plans that need to be developed and submitted back to the regulators, which include the province, the federal government, and Squamish Nation as an environmental regulator. And they did issue their own environmental assessment certificate for our project outside the provincial and federal ones.
Right. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to bring you up to date a little bit. Whether it's 2015 or 2016 that those environmental assessments were conducted, that's 7 years ago or 6 years ago. And I just wanted to bring you up to date on a few things that have happened locally here. For example, whales and dolphins have returned to Howe Sound. Herring has returned. So these things, maybe herring was part of your assessments, but I think that they have been found to lay their eggs in places that were not part of your environmental assessments. Anyway, on Bowen here, we've conducted a hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment for which marine accident is one of the top 8 priority risks. We've got an evacuation plan and these kinds of things now, partly based on these risks, including droughts in the summer and the higher risk of wildfire that Bowen is seeing due to extreme weather. And that's another one of the risks that we've identified and that we're working with. I'm wearing a button that says we need to be more careful with an island. And that's partly what we're working under. Since 2016 or 15, we've discovered all these glass sponge reefs in the Howe Sound, and I'm not sure that they were considered in your environmental assessments. We've got a biosphere region has now been declared. That's a UNESCO program. Important bird area. I could go on, but Bowen Island Municipality has also declared a climate emergency. And within the past 6 months, we've had the flooding, the atmospheric river that's flooded part of Metro Vancouver that we're part of. The heat dome, we're coming up on the anniversary of that. We've had culverts wash out here on Bowen and all of these kinds of impacts just recently, which are, to me, evidence of the climate changes that are coming and the climate risks that I believe your project might contribute to. And since 2015, I'd point you to item 12.5 on our agenda, if you have looked at that. 2015, in February 23rd, was the first time that Bowen Council has been passing motions of non-support for your project. And the most recent was May 25th, so almost exactly 2 years ago, 2020, when we passed the following resolution. A couple of them, and one of them, and we put staff time into this too. The resolution that we passed then was that council directs staff to communicate to the Provincial Environmental Assessment Office that Bowen Island Municipality continues to not support the Woodfibre LNG project. And I'll be putting that back on the table again tonight in the hopes that perhaps council will consider whether we want to reinforce that motion, that we continue to oppose it. So I'd like to move that Bowen Island Council directs staff to communicate to the Provincial Environmental Assessment Office that Bowen Island Municipality continues to not support the Woodfibre LNG project.
I think we maybe, yeah, so, no, really.
All right, I'll do it later.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Very.
Yeah, great. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the presentation, by the way. Without doubt, this is an enormous undertaking, and it's one that everyone is taking very seriously. So if you'll allow a little levity here, because we're a municipality representing over 4,000 people. How would you like us to describe to 4,000 people plus the big win that they will enjoy as a result of your project? How are they going to be better off with the project? Where's the win? So that's what I'd like you to hear. What's the message we can pass on as a municipal council to the residents of Bowen Island?
Sure, thank you for the question. I did try to make it evident throughout the presentation, but in terms of the direct benefits for Bowen Island and the residents of Bowen Island, it is jobs opportunities for years to come that are going to be family supporting jobs, well-paying jobs, procurement opportunities for local businesses to participate in the project all along the supply chain. And we think it's contributing to a project that can be environmentally sustainable, and it's something that we know young people very much care about in this day and age, but to be a project that is socially responsible and also helping to offset GHG emissions globally for other jurisdictions that are large emitters compared to Canada.
And you have one representative already who lives on the island.
We do. Yes, our Vice President, Chris, is a resident of Bowen Island.
Yes.
Maybe Chris should speak to it then.
I echo the same thing with them, right? High-paying jobs, well-paying jobs, and as Julia mentioned, it offsets GHG emissions globally. So just outside of our bubble that we live on, there in Bowen, it does reduce greenhouse gases globally. So there's lots of opportunities for all of us that live on Bowen Island now and long term, as Julia mentioned.
Okay.
I would like to maybe add, if I may, big industrial projects like ours don't only come with a direct benefit to the public directly from Woodfibre, but our operations will benefit a multitude of companies that supports our business. Many times those support businesses are in the magnitude higher than actually what the plants do. So I think there is a maybe more indirect benefits for all the supporting companies, maintenance, cleaning, marine services, talk services, and all these other companies that support we make our business operate, that also create a financial benefit to the local community, to the province, and to the country in general. So maybe that's also to be thought about.
Right. Maureen.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm Councillor Maureen Nicholson. And I have two questions. The first one is, has Woodfibre actually made its final investment decision?
Yes, so our notice to proceed that we provided to our prime contractor, McDermott International, we are treating that as the go-ahead to progress with pre-construction works and then eventually into construction and to procure all the services that are needed to do that work.
But is there a future decision still required?
At this time,
No.
Our notice to proceed is serving as our final investment decision.
It's serving as, okay. And then my second question is sort of the flip side of the question that Councillor Kale asked. He asked you about the benefits and how those might be explained to Bowen Islanders if that were our desire. My question is, as I said, the flip side. What are the costs to Bowen Island if this project proceeds from your perspective and transparent? What are the costs?
Christian, do you want to communicate anything in terms of marine distribution? Anything that I know that this community is very much focused on?
I think in terms of financial cost, that I don't see a direct link between the marine vessels coming past Bowen Island and Bowen Island itself. The number of vessels that they will be transiting is a very small number over the years, so it doesn't really have an effect. Actually, the overall traffic in the area we represent about 0.5% of the overall general traffic. So sorry, I cannot think of any specific costs that directly will affect Bowen Islands. I don't know if anybody can help me with that here, but that's not something I could think of.
Nothing. Yeah, financial. I was just going to add that I think the risk of this project not proceeding is a missed opportunity to offset global emissions where they are actually very detrimental. And I mentioned a bit about the project offsetting emissions that would be created by 700,000 vehicles per year. So not being able to provide export LNG to the countries that need it most, I think is a risk in terms of where we are globally and the time that we are in history with energy security.
There's another point as well that the world needs energy, and there is a transition. There's a clear transition between coal into LNG and later on into other types of energy production. But the demand for energy is there now. This is an opportunity for, in this case, in Canada, to produce LNG in the most environmental way possible. As Julia mentioned, it would be the greenest LNG plant in the world. It will be a missed opportunity because that LNG demand will be produced by other sources in other parts of the world that will not have potentially the same levels of environmental concerns that we have. So,
if I could just restate my question or repeat my question. My question is specifically about Bowen Island. What are the costs to Bowen Island if this were to proceed? Not the world, not British Columbia, Bowen Island. When you made your presentation in Squamish, which I watched a week or so ago, you were very specific in the benefits to Squamish. And I could see that the council there was listening to you and also was in some instances challenged. But here you have a different audience, and the costs to Bowen Island, in answering my question, you went to financial costs. There are other costs other than financial costs, and you kind of alluded to that in your presentation earlier, where you talked about, you know, that there are different ways of looking at this project. There is a decreased sense of safety on this island related to this project. That is a cost to Bowen Island. So I won't push the question anymore. I'll back away from it. But just I think it would be really important for you to think about more broadly, think about the costs to Bowen Island and Bowen Islanders if this project were to proceed. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far with a significant part of your audience here. So thank you again. Thank you for tolerating my pressing the question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, just one final question then. As you know, Katsum has been declared a UNESCO biosphere region. What impact has that had on your thinking? Or I know it's very early days, and I'm sure there hasn't been much discussion with the committee if it's even there yet. But what's your thinking about that? Anything at all at this point?
Christian, are you able to take this question?
Well, we will really congratulate for obtaining that designation. It's a great achievement. We definitely support, you know, the capacity of being able to, you know, being able to grow in an environmental way. So it's, you know, there's economic growth for everybody in an environmental way, in also protecting the environment. And this designation will allow us to do that. And they're really looking forward to being part of that. You know, that being able to support the communities in being able to support the environment and at the same time support the economy and on all in an environmental way.
All right.
And it is something that we strongly support.
For sure, we congratulate you and support this designation for sure.
Thank you for that. All right, since there's no more discussion, I'd just like to thank you for your time and your update. And it would be nice if we got together again in the future and see where things are starting to lie down here. So again, thank you, Christian. Thank you very much. And thank you, Chris, Julia. That's very great. That's super. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to business arising from the minutes and conservation development policy. Daniel Martin, and planning and development. May 10th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. So I have for you tonight a draft conservation development policy that you last saw earlier this year. So, just for anyone watching and for Council's reminder, this has been a Council priority in our strategic plan for a number of years, including 2021, which contemplated present and draft a policy, and then finally adopt a policy on conservation development. This policy work builds on objectives and policies that are in our OCP. So I've pulled a sample of them here in terms of overall objectives to have land set aside as green space, to discourage strip or ribbon development, to encourage clustered development with areas of green space between those clustered development. More policies, so outside of Stone Cove, preferring residential clustered development. Again, policy 350, having clustered forms of development and building design. So then I won't go through some of the background and the history of this policy, just to say that this was work, came out of work from our advisory planning commission and some volunteer members who used to report an initial draft policy that we received further input from our number of our advisory committees. So the draft policy that is in your agenda has an objective to ensure that all rezoning applications outside of the Sun Cove Village incorporate conservation development principles and achieve the goal sort of nature needs have. So the purpose of the policy is to guide council's evaluation of applications for land use bylaw amendments, implement policies from the OCP that promote cluster development, protection of environmentally sensitive areas, and development consistent with the principles of conservation development. And then it also aims to serve as a guide for applicants and staff in evaluating applications, or especially applicants as they consider submitting applications. So guidelines to meet the challenges of climate change, preservation of green environment sensitive areas, and to manage proposed development, all rezonings outside of Stone Cove Village boundary. In addition to other municipal policies and bylaws will be evaluated on the basis of an analysis of existing natural features and environmental sensitive areas present on the site, incorporation of conservation development principles with a goal that a minimum of 50% of the total land is protected from development, and priority is to be given to protection of any identified environmentally sensitive areas. The final guideline being the means by which the protection is to be provided, this may be through mechanisms such as parkland dedication, protective covenant, or other means deemed appropriate by council. The policy then includes a number of definitions of terms that are in the policy. So it's 4 definitions, 3 of which are taken from the OCP definitions, and the 4th one being the conservation development definition, which was developed by the Advisory Planning Commission, with the one change based on our last council meeting of before. I think it had productive farmland and the definition from the APC. So, I don't necessarily need to read these out, but conservation development to protect biodiversity, farmland, ecosystem services, scenic landscape resources, as well as help maintain the character of rural communities, by protecting, identifying and protecting ecologically sensitive areas and other green space. Development is then built around the protected areas. So then there's a definition for environmentally sensitive areas and green space, and so there's again definitions from the OCP. So the recommendation for you tonight is to refer this draft policy to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Environment and Climate Advisory.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Questions, Ron?
Thank you, Daniel. I'm really glad to see the additions, the bits from the official community plan in there. I think that really helps it fit with the established long-term planning for Bowen. And I think it'll help everybody understand the policy better. And I just support it. And I'm wondering why are we referring it back to the Advisory Planning Commission again?
Yeah, so this was drafted by the Advisory Planning Commission that then did referral to a number of advisory committees, and then staff redrafted it based on that last council meeting we had. So the Advisory Planning Commission, since their initial writing the report and the policy, haven't commented on the changes based on the feedback from committees. So I felt it appropriate to go back to them.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, David. I'm sorry, and then Maureen.
Very short comment. Thanks, Daniel. You did great work. Thanks a lot. It's nice and easy to understand. You simplified it as we were asking, and I'm fully supportive. Thanks for it. Thanks.
Maureen.
And I really like the direction this has moved in. I would have one question though, and it was in the definition of cluster development, where it reads, meaning the grouping of lots for single family dwellings in a location of parcels. And I wondered why single family? Is that needed? Or does grouping of lots or dwellings in a location or parcel?
So what I'd say, like I took that question straight from the OCP. So I wanted to be, and I think that's where I used the cluster development language in the policy. So I wanted to be consistent with the OCP in terms of language. You're right. I mean, it's that limiting on council. I mean, maybe to the extent that a rezoning that was seeking not to be single family, but to be multi-family outside of Stone would likely need an OCP amendment.
So it becomes much more complicated, and when it be, if we try to change it here, and it makes more sense to change it in the context of a specific rezoning.
Yeah, I'd like an OCP amendment, and when we change this, then we're using OCP policy. The definitions is different than the OCP definition.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, sorry, yeah, Michael.
Daniel, thank you. Dan, just one question. I'm looking at the 50% now, park dedication, green space. So hopefully we end up with lots of 50% parks. Whose responsibility are these areas, and who cares for these areas? What and whom do these fall? For future care, what's the plan?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of mechanisms that we have used traditionally. So sometimes parks are, or parkland has been provided to the Islands Trust Conservancy, formerly Islands Trust Fund. So I think there's 3 or 4, so I'm correct me, where they manage the, a number are obviously municipal parks, either as dedicated parkland, or we take them into open space and manage them in parks. Or we have taken protective covenants where the land is still owned by the property owner, but there's a covenant on it that requires that it not be used or developed. So in many cases, it is the municipality taking on a certain level of responsibility.
Because I think you'd agree that, I mean, that's a challenge, whether it's the Gateway Gardens, whether it's the commemorative gardens, it's these pieces of land coming under our jurisdiction. I'm opposed, by the way, but we're going to have to think our way through these, because that's a cost we're handing down unless, as part of this agreement, there is some deal struck where the development actually takes care and agrees to take care, covenants to take care of the piece of land. Just concerned is, okay, I see park dedication, I see green space, fantastic, but these could be several and many small areas throughout the island, and what, and whose jurisdiction are they going to fall? So I'm not asking you to raise that now. I'm saying I put it out there as something that we're going to need to talk through, because I see areas around the island which perhaps are not as well cared as I'd like to see, and I understand why. But I hate, so that there's a challenge.
Yeah, I know, like the Islands Trust Conservancy, for example, when they take land and agree, take it, part of their process is requiring essentially a payment to go along with it to manage maintenance of it for a period of time. And so it's something that maybe we should consider as part of the rezoning. I think these are long-term costs of it, and how is that managed?
Whatever. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Sue, then Rob.
Thank you. Just speaking as a board member, as the vice chair of the Islands Trust Conservancy, there are more tools for managing protected green space and parks coming on all the time. For example, the Islands Trust Conservancy right now holds 3 nature reserves and a couple of 2 or 3 conservation covenants. I know the municipality has conservation covenants too, but the Island Trust Conservancy manages those. And we're part of the Federation of the Islands Trust. And that can be something that we can work with partners on. Also locally, we've got the Bowen Island Conservancy who now own and manage a nature refuge that's going to be opened on the weekend. We've got other park partners, including Crippen Regional Park and who knows, Apodaca Provincial Park. Anyway, there's various ways and including covenants. I want to come back to the if a conservation covenant is set up, the funds are set into an account for if eventually the covenant is breached, then there will be legal fees, and that's what those funds, the donation that to accompany the conservation covenant is set up for. Thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, I just, I think I want to make it clear here that we're not trying to get more land here. That's not the idea. The idea is to conserve green space. And if it has to be done in a park or trails or whatever. And we also have to consider, I mean, when you talk about a rezoning, what if somebody's rezoning an acre and a half or 2 acres? Then you might not have the 50% rule isn't going to really sit in there. So it's going to have to be nuanced a bit. And I would just hope that obviously planning department, this 50% doesn't become a hard number. And it's just actually, sort of a ethereal idea. So that would be my only concern. And what would you say about that? Like a rezoning, not all rezonings are obviously gonna, we think about 10-acre lots or 20-acre lots or something like that. And then of course that fits right into the sort of model of this, this conservation development, but for the smaller lots, I mean, obviously it's gonna have to.
I mean, you're right, like it's much easier on a large, a large vacant lot where essentially it's like, have the whole lot. It's easier for us to say this is the target, right? And they can sort of plan with that knowledge. Now, it's harder when you think about a 2-acre lot that already has a house on it and a driveway. Yeah, how does that play out? So whenever I've been advising people and saying like this has been, it hasn't been in a policy, but we've had in other rezonings where that's been council's goal, that there would be some understanding of like, well, this area is already developed on the lot. And, essentially people are presenting to council what they can towards meeting that goal.
Yeah, so as long as it doesn't come down to, a hard number that, we have to have 50% of your land in subdivision or rezoning. That's not the way we should look at it. Any further questions? Allison?
I sent in a couple of suggested rewordings to Daniel to make the intro to the guidelines section read better, and the other the third bullet make it flow a little better. The purpose of under guidelines, we said to meet the challenges of climate change, but climate change or no climate change, if this is good planning, meeting the challenges of climate change is not in the policy objective or in the purpose. So I think it's just good planning. It stands on its own. It's by putting in challenges of climate change, you're just trying to say, well, this is why we're doing it. We're not doing it because it's good planning. And then you've only got official community plan quotes that have to do with, I think they're the steps out of the residential or the out of the environment section. I didn't go back and look at which section they're out of, but they seem to be more to do with development rather than with, are there other goals and policies and objectives for the environmentally sensitive and for the natural and historic that maybe should be quoted in here as well. And then the other thing is under the purpose, you talk about the principle of conservation development. And under the second bullet, you talk about conservation development principles. So same words, slightly turned around, but there's no definition of conservation development principles. So if somebody was looking to say, what are the conservation development principles? It's not there in the definition. So I don't know whether you change the definition around a little bit and call it conservation development principles are. And then, you know, list them. That was, and then, just a curiosity question. So a development like Parkview Slopes is not within the Snug Cove Village boundary, is it?
I believe it is. Yeah, I don't think so.
Is it or isn't it? I didn't think it was.
Oh, I think it.
I think it's the village periphery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's village periphery, so that's not the Snug Cove Village boundary. So I'm just thinking there are some.
It's within the sewer area. It's within the.
That doesn't make sense, Snug Cove boundary. They weren't meant to not have sewer area was created with Cape Hills.
You're right, it is outside, so I would imagine that an OCP amendment would amend the village boundary as well.
To include it. Oh, that was intended that would be. Include that sort of law would be included. Yeah. And then that was sort of the other question which Miranda raised is, you know, it talked about all land use bylaw amendments. Or in purpose, evaluation for land use bylaw amendments to implement policies. And policy applications for land use bylaw. But there are lots that really aren't development. They might be very simple. I mean, the building's already there, but you change the use. The insurance company, for example. Well, let's, you know, say the ready potato and the sunset. So.
You're right. I mean, I think there'd have to be some like council sort of implementing the policy, like if somebody is changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like a minor change in the rezoning that we'd say, okay, that's not triggering this policy.
Yeah, but then that gets to a matter of interpretation.
Yeah.
And lack of consistency. So the clearer the policy is as to just what it's going to apply to, the better.
Okay.
And again, as I said, I don't think we need a policy, we just need a guide to refer to all the sections of the OCP that are there.
So this is just to refer the draft policy to the Advisory Planning Commission Environmental Climate Action Advisory Committee. So it's pretty early on in the plan. So yeah, go ahead.
I'd be happy to. Sure. Because I think it is a nice, clear policy now, but I'd be interested in what they come back with. So I move that council refer draft policy number 2202, conservation development, to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee to comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Maureen. Further discussion? Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor? Great, thank you. Going to move into bylaws. So it's a rezoning application RZ 01-2022 land use bylaw number 57-2022, amendment bylaw number 580-2022. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Daniel, back to you.
Thank you again, Mayor. Right. So this is a rezoning application for a municipally owned lot in Snug Cove on Bowen Island Trunk Road that's known as a legal description and no civic and so known as Lot B. And in particular, this relates to then its zoning in compared to the neighboring lot 1011 Miller Road. So it's a little hard to see on the map, but you can see that 1011 Miller Road is in a zone variation, so it's VC1B. Whereas Lot B is in the, so VC stands for Village Commercial. So Lot B is in the standard Village Commercial 1 zone, and 1011 Miller is in the Village Commercial 1B zone variation. So the VC1B zone variation is the variation that allowed it to have a gas station on the site. So service station, use gas station. 1011 Miller, for those University Island, was a former gas station site. It had a number of other. So it doesn't permit two specific uses, commercial guest accommodation and bed and breakfast use. And it has differing setbacks than the general Village Commercial 1 zone. But in terms of the official community plan, they're both the same. They're both in the Village Commercial designation. It's in the official community plan. policies. So why this application is before you is that in October of last year, the municipality reached an agreement with the owners of 1011 Miller that the municipality would exchange a portion of land from the municipally owned Lot B, which is a little. Okay. So exchange a portion of municipally owned Lot B along this property line for an equivalent portion of land from 1011 Miller Road, which is this area in blue at the bottom here, and that's to construct the multi-use path that has currently largely been constructed up Bowen Island Trunk Road. So we received a federal grant for the funding with very strict timelines in terms of finishing the work. And so in terms of land acquisition, we have reached this agreement in advance of formal ownership. And so we advertised the notice of intent to dispose of the land in October to satisfy community charter notice requirements. And the agreement provided them with permission to commence the work on the multi-use path to allow us to meet timelines established in the capital grant. And then I'll just say on this diagram as well, the area in pink, then there's a further, or the agreement also envisioned a further area of land where we were committed to enter to do construction work, but not to have permanent ownership over. That's the area in pink. But so the area in blue is about 85 square meters of land. And there's just a little bit of so you can see 2.25 meter wide strip along Bowen Island Trunk Road, and then a 2.4 meter wide strip along the corner of the lot. So the rezoning or the amended bylaw itself is fairly straightforward. It would take this portion of land, the 85.7 square meter portion of Lot B, and place it into the commercial one. And then often we're thinking, staff is thinking directly from council to commence a lot line adjustment application, which would then bring this area A, would make it part of 1011 Miller Road. And then the area that was shown in blue along Bowen Island Trunk Road would be a road dedication. So 1011 Miller Road would get a little bit wider and a little bit narrower, I guess. The other thing about this application is that recent changes to the Local Government Act said that a local government is not required to hold a public hearing on a proposed zoning bylaw if there's an official community plan in effect and the bylaw is consistent with the official community plan. So staff are proposing using this section of the Local Government Act, but to not hold a public hearing for this change, but instead notice is given in advance. So the recommendation is that council refer the bylaw 580 to the June 27th regular council meeting for consideration of first reading and direct staff to provide notice for the bylaw under section 467 of the Local Government Act. That's the section that outlines the alternative notice. So essentially we do the same thing to replace notice in the newspaper and notice would go out by mail. And then further we recommend council authorize staff to submit the subdivision application for the parcel line adjustment for Lot B and to waive the associated fees with that parcel line adjustment. That's the end of my presentation. I can leave the recommendation up if it's helpful.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Questions? Any? Rob?
Yeah, not a question, just a comment to staff that I thought that was going to be a real big issue for us getting the multi-use path down to really the critical location, which is the ferry. And I was very impressed by the ingenuity of making that swap. I didn't hold my breath on it, but you guys make it happen, and that's all. It's a great opportunity to move something like that forward. So that's all I want to say.
And thank you. I'll just say that I wasn't directly responsible for that, and that was Patrick and also Emma Child before she.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. So.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. I'm very supportive, but now I've got a little question because you said wider and narrower, and I'm wondering if you could.
It's covering its bases.
Widen this way into Lot B, and it would get narrower, I guess, top to bottom and side to side.
Got you, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought you were just talking about that blue bit, and I was confused. Okay, thank you. He was giving you
Yes, anybody?
No, I'm just going to ask the blue bit is the bottom.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
I'd like to say how much I supported and I congratulate you. Just before I did, I got to ask the question. I'm sorry. Blue bit was the lower button and thank you.
All that, we'll figure it out, Michael.
I am totally clear. Beyond that. And I'm sorry to hold up proceedings for us.
Okay, is everybody okay with the recommendation? And I just read it, so we'll start from there.
I don't know if you read it. Do we need to read it out?
I can read it out, yeah. Here, the council referred bylaw number 580/2022, the June 27th regular council meeting for consideration of first reading. The council directs staff to provide notice for bylaw 580 under section 467 of the Local Government Act. The council authorized staff to submit a subdivision application for a parcel line adjustment for lot B, legally described as lot B, district lot 490, group 1, New Westminster District Plan BCP 20428, and the council waive the associated fee for a parcel line adjustment for lot B, legally described as lot B, district lot 490, group 1, New Westminster District Plan BCP 20428.
Well done. Thank you. Well done. Okay, so, move that, second that.
Can I just ask one picky question?
Yes.
Parcel line adjustment or parcel lot line adjustment?
In our fee bylaw, it's a parcel line adjustment. So
That's for the fee, not the.
it's for the application date, yeah.
All right, anybody else for the discussion? No?
No, hang on, just a minute.
Okay.
But so for subdivision purposes, it's not a lot line adjustment, which is the third line paragraph?
I had looked, up our application types. I mean, yeah, so it's a parcel.
Okay, so our application form refers to a parcel
Yeah.
line. This has nothing to do with the registration.
No, I've never used that term, but that's what I love. So that's what I'm going to be considering.
Last question, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to move on to 7.2, detached secondary suite minimum lot size review and land use bylaw number 57, 2022, amendment bylaw number 581. Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you. So just by way of refresher, in April, I was before you at that council meeting, council directed staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw to remove the required minimum lot size for detached secondary suites and to bring that prepared bylaw to a future council meeting for consideration on first reading. And at that same meeting, council directed staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw to prohibit an accessory residential use from being used as a residential guest accommodation. So I'm here to make with that bylaw for consideration of first reading. And so the current regulations for accessory residential use, which is how we regulate secondary suites attached to detached, has this number 4 that just says minimum lot size, the minimum size of the lot on which a detached secondary suite may be located is 0.36 hectares. And so what bylaw number 581 would do would be to replace that number 4, essentially removing it and replacing it with a new line that says no residential guest accommodation use is permitted within an accessory residential use. So essentially achieving those 2 directions by removing one number 4 and replacing it with a new number 4. I just then have some stuff, essentially the bylaws, that one change. I have a little bit of greater discussion. So one being, when I presented to you in April, I said we wanted to look at the DP guidelines again and see how appropriate they were given reduced lot sizes for detached secondary suites. And one of the things we saw is that some of the guidelines actually sort of envision, so we have a guideline that's established any detached secondary suite would have to establish and maintain privacy with respect to the adjacent lots. Talks about location, orientation of decks, stairs, doors, windows, balconies, being sensitive to existing development on adjacent lots, to minimize overview and shadowing, and to minimize impacts on established views. So we have these current guidelines that typically now in applications we see are not very hard to meet. Like our typical detached secondary suite is often quite far from the lot lines, quite far from neighbors. So applications to meet this guideline is not a very big challenge. I think then it could become a larger challenge on smaller lots where more consideration would have to be given and greater degree of review, but that the current guidelines would be. So I've looked at some other guidelines that have quite sort of prescriptive development standards, and they talk about you can have this maximum size of windows, or you can have how everything's oriented. And I thought that was probably overkill given that sort of great diversity of lots we have on Bowen, but that actual guideline does meet what you need, and that we would just be making sure that on smaller lots, if we're aware that this is a consideration of that. The other piece that council had discussed at the April 25th meeting was maximum floor area. So what's the maximum size for a detached secondary suite? So the current regulations allows 65 square meters plus 0.625% of the lot area to a maximum of 115 square meters. And how that translates is that on a lot that is 0.8 hectares or about 2 acres, it's the maximum of 115 square meters, which is 1,238 square feet. And I've just highlighted here that I'll go on to the next slide, but looking at, okay, what would be a sort of a logical expansion of that if council wanted to, and seeing that maybe the next breakpoint being at 1.2 hectares or a 3-acre lot size would hit a maximum of 140 square meters or about 1,500 square feet. And so just this is a staff recommendation, but this is just bringing a suggested motion based on that would be simply amending the regulation to say 65 square meters plus 0.65% of lot area to a maximum of 140 square meters would make that change. Going up to that, it would go up to that 1.2 hectare size. So essentially it would allow that greater reward. So the recommendation is that the bylaw 581 be read a first time and then referred to the Islands Trust, the Advisory Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee, and to a full open house.
Plus, we could consider the suggested amendment to the bylaw before we
Yes.
give it.
Yes, probably yes. That would be a discussion before moving to resolution.
Got a question.
Go ahead.
We've received a fair number of letters, but I think most of them have been not happy with the residential guest accommodation being prohibited. But my understanding is that as long as they're operating a residential guest accommodation now, they could continue.
Yes.
If it was. Now, I guess my question related to that is, I think the concept of the grandfathering is that that use continues. But because we've limited the use of properties for residential guest accommodation to 120 days, does it fit that use? And I'm wondering for clarification for people, is there some way, I've seen in other legislation where you say this is effective for, properties created after a certain day. So could we put some language in there that this is, this is only for residential accommodation built or used as residential guest accommodation, if it was licensed to be,
Has to be licensed.
if it was licensed as operating as a residential guest accommodation as of X date, this particular section doesn't apply. And I think that might, because I didn't go and look with the people that were writing whether some of them already had, residential guest accommodation and thought they would no longer be able to have it. Or
I think the point, a couple of things. So one, you're right. Like if you're operating now, you would be an existing non-conforming use. The only recommendation if the bylaw goes through, something for council to consider would be having an adoption date in the bylaw, so that the bylaw would include a clause as it comes into effect at a certain date, and then we can.
But I'm also thinking of people's insurance policies and things that if you're a non-conforming use, often your insurance company isn't too happy.
Right.
So if we had something that said, if you were operating and continue to operate a licensed residential guest accommodation as of X date, this section doesn't apply.
Yeah.
So that I think might provide help with insurance and a guarantee that we do have some visitor accommodation. And then my other question just has to do with the, could you have on a large lot, could you have a residential guest accommodation, a detached secondary suite and an attached secondary suite?
No.
Why not?
Because it only allows part of the other. You got it.
So if you're on a 5 or 10 acre lot and you've got a house you could have a suite in, and you've got a big enough lot to have a detached, and you could have a 1,000 square foot garage. So why couldn't you have, a detached residential and accessory use as well as the secondary suite.
Well, and you say, at what point do you change them up? You know, how big a lot do you have to
Well,
have?
lot coverage and stuff like that.
Lot coverage.
Fix it all up.
I mean, I think that's long been, from the Housing Advisory Committee, and some of their reports have long been, they would like to see that change. That's not being considered as part of this project, but it has, they would bring it up.
Yeah, just really so I know what I'm voting on, because it's the bylaw number, the vote out of this land use bylaw number 57, amendment bylaw number 581, and then it says and. Be read a first time. Okay, so thanks. So that will be good to have in there. And that council refer bylaw to the island threat. So basically, you're asking us to refer this out.
Yeah.
So you have an advisory open house. Okay, I hope all of that. And, I mean, I still have issues with the sprawl issue, which I brought up last time, but we'll cross the bridge when we get to it. So.
I would like to move the amendment that's on the third page, that amend bylaw, that the council directs staff to amend bylaw 581/2022 to amend section 3.57.3 of the land use bylaw to read: a detached secondary suite shall not exceed a total floor area of 65 square meters plus 0.625% of lot area to a maximum of 140 square meters, which means on the bigger lots, you can have a slightly bigger detached secondary suite.
Yeah, with that.
You read that, Councilor. I moved it. I support that. Maureen seconded.
Any further discussion on that? Go ahead, so.
On the amendment. On the amendment? Yes, I'm going to support the amendment, but I'm probably not going to support the overall motion, because I don't support the idea of 2 dwellings on every lot size. I think that's a rural sprawl issue. However, if it's going to pass anyway, by sooner it passed with this amendment, because this would mean houses as big as mine that could support a family. Because I'm at exactly 1,500 square feet is our house. So that's a principle that I will support.
Okay, so any discussion on the amendment? Further discussion? No? I'll ask a question. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Councilor Howland in opposition. And then we'll move on to the original.
As amended.
As amended, yes, sorry.
Right, please. Yeah. Daniel, when we have the people who are writing these letters, they can continue if they've got their license. When that property is sold to a new owner, is the license transferable, or is the permission transferable?
Yes, the non-conforming use or the non-conforming use would continue based on the use on the land, regardless of the ownership. So yes, if somebody was operating a non-conforming use and the ownership changed to the land, they continued that use. They could continue.
If for any reason there would be a lapse, a period of time when that property wasn't used for that purpose, there's no penalty. If they're supposing, for whatever reasons, that property wasn't used for that purpose, shall we say for a 2-year period, and it was to start again, there would be no penalties or no reason why that shouldn't happen. I'm assuming that they've kept the license current.
If a use is discontinued for a continued period of 6 months, then the non-conforming use denied. It's yeah.
Okay, so how does that deal with the 106 months?
Yeah.
188?
So the non-conforming use says it's for a seasonal use. It can include seasonal market cycles. I mean, typically, I think the one is typically the 120 days is not done. You know, like when we the residential gets come, I think people aren't renting it for 120 days at the start of the year and then not throughout the year, but they're renting it right.
Prime season is May through September, and that's your biggest dollar. So that's when they're going to do it.
I mean, I think realistically, in terms of our enforcement of that would be if the license is continued, right? They've licensed it in 2023. They have a business license, they're posting it. You know, it's operating as a residential guest accommodation throughout the year by nature of. They've advertised for it, they have a business license for it.
License is an annual thing.
Yeah, like that's how we would be doing it. If somebody said, okay, I'm not renewing my license for 2023 because I'm not operating this business anymore. If they came back in 2024, then we are saying, okay, you discontinued it, you weren't licensed for 2024, rather than us, you know, trying to monitor both.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the use can be allowed to continue.
No.
So they used to be allowed to continue for as long as it continues. So it's discontinued if the property sells to somebody who says, I don't want to continue this business, you know, and they stop operating it for that use, then any subsequent use, they would need to, you know, go temporary use permit or go rezoning application.
But all I would ask, you know, that as we develop this bylaw, anything you do to make that really any form of that. I support what you're saying, what you're meaning, but the real life is that properties do sell. Things do, and people's lifestyles do change, and maybe sometimes licenses matter for whatever reasons. So I think it needs to be very clear that if the usage, generally agreed usage, with or without permit, but in this case without, what period of time before? And then if someone reapplies and said, well, look, it was being used this way for 5 years, and they always had permits, it's been a 2-3 year break. What are you going to do? Turn around and say, well, it doesn't apply anymore. You're going to use it for long-term rental.
I guess I would say from one point of view, yes, you know, that's the intent of the bylaw is to change the preference for secondary suites from residential guest accommodation to long-term rental. And then we're in a case on Bowen Island where, you know, it's felt by council, there's a surplus of rental accommodation and a need for tourist accommodation. Council could revisit the bylaw. But as of now, that's the goal of the bylaw is to say the desired use for, we're permitting detached secondary suites on smaller lots, we're permitting secondary suites on the understanding that they're providing rental housing. Yeah, rental housing, long-term preference over residential guest accommodation.
So the moral is if you want to do it, you better do it now.
Well, it's not to say that you can't also seek rezoning for commercial designation.
Yeah.
If you're really adamant that that's what you want to do with your property, then you could seek a temporary use permit and as an initial trial period before you sought a full rezoning. So there still are methods.
And presumably part of that, like the temporary use permit application would be presenting to council why it wouldn't be appropriate in your case for it to be rental housing, and you present that case to the municipality, to council, to say this is why I can't have it as a long-term rental, and instead I'm seeking to have it as short-term.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so back to the original, the original recommendation.
I move that bylaw number 581, 2022, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002. Amendment bylaw number 581, 2022, be read a first time as amended.
Okay, I'll second that.
You want to do 2 parts? Or 2 parts, because you guys will go for the referral.
Okay, sure. Any further discussion on that part then?
You have a second?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
In our discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we kind of jumped over something. We jumped over to a consideration of the correspondence that we've received and also offering the writers of that correspondence, the comfort of non-conforming use. But it's still up for debate in the bylaw itself, whether we actually want to state that no residential guest accommodation use is permitted within, et cetera. So that point hasn't been settled, and we didn't really discuss it, and I don't think we have to really discuss it.
Well, it's part of the bylaw.
Yeah, other than just being aware that that's something that is being proposed as a change, and I support this going to out to the public, because thus far we've heard from people who want to continue doing this. And I'd like to hear from a broader range of community members who may have goals that are more in line with the goals of this policy. So was that clear, or did I get muddled?
No, I see the direction you're going, but I think this, first of all, it's very early days on this. And secondly, I think with that amendment that we put in there, I think it makes it quite clear.
The amendment was just to make papers for.
But Adam's thing is, it's quite clear that you can't operate it. So, and I think that's a will of council. I think that's the direction we were going.
Oh, I think so too, but I just wanted us to be aware of what we did in our discussion.
Yeah.
Which was kind of jumping over that point rather than debating again.
Well, I guess part of the reason I was raising my point about writing something into the bylaw that says this is only effective for properties that are built after such and such a date. So that those people that are operating, maybe let it lapse for a year, could then continue to operate.
It's not a build date, it's an operating.
No, but I'm saying, if we're talking any new residential, any new, what is it called, accessory dwelling unit that is built cannot be used. So if we had a clause in there that, you know, anything that was this
Prior to
that operated as, you know, prior to.
Yeah.
So that leaves them a little more flexibility. And I'd be concerned that somebody might challenge you on 180 days. So we need to check that one out.
I think it's important that people realize they got to have a business license too.
And
Because there's a lot of
operating,
they don't have business licenses.
don't have a business license. You're not operating.
If they don't already have a business license, then they're already at risk.
Yeah.
No, because we haven't passed this final.
No, I mean, they're at risk because they're operating illegally.
Better in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. I'll be voting against this motion. Although I support the idea of long-term rental and providing more of those. I think that was something that came up even 10 years ago as a dominant community theme when we were reviewing or updating our official community plan, was affordable housing and housing for those who didn't have home ownership. And but I'm going to propose this on the smaller lots because partly we just advanced the conservation development policy. And part of the definition of conservation development is help maintain the character of rural communities. And what I see with smaller lots in Vancouver, looking at what happened when they allowed laneway housing, is they lost a lot of trees. And they gained more impermeable surfaces, impervious surfaces that the water can't soak into. And to me, that's not the character of a rural community. I'm also concerned with the loss of other nature, obviously, in neighborhoods with smaller lots. I think so far, we've managed in most neighborhoods to keep a rural character, but I'd be worried about that. I also wonder if by doing this, we're not increasing house prices by allowing extra development on the smaller lots. I don't know too much about that part of it, but I just want to say that I'm not in favor because to me, this is kind of rural sprawl by allowing it everywhere in all lot sizes. That doesn't seem to me to be careful land use planning, and I think it will erode the character of rural communities. And so I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I'm not going to support this either. A bit of a similar vein to Councilor Fast, with a bit of a difference in center. Like I generally support more density, but I think density, it needs to be done in the right spots where we can service it, where it's affordable, where it meets our other objectives of climate change and not sprawling and keeping our forests alive. And so I'd actually be very in favor of even having a house that they can lift up and put another unit underneath. I'd support that in the code. So for me, the size is not the big issue. It's more where we're putting the density and how that's going to impact our ongoing budgets on road servicing and even building a multi-use path because kids can't ride on the road now because there's more people driving to the other end of the island. So I just see all those impacts sort of going against a lot of the things that we have in our other community, in our other plans. And so I see a bit of a friction there. So I probably won't support this one.
Hey, David.
Thank you, Gary. I wasn't going to say anything, but I probably should. I'm going to support this. I'm also concerned about the kind of the sprawl idea. I do worry about that, like sort of spreading it everywhere. But I want to speak about rural character. Affordability is an important part of rural character. It's just as important as trees. So I just want to make that point.
Yeah, we're trying to produce some kind of accommodation here on the island and to keep our diversity for people that don't, can't live in single family homes right now and stuff like that. So anyway, Maureen and
just one point in implementing similar bylaws. My understanding is that other communities have in some cases established a maximum as part of a rollout, that there could be 30 homes built under these provisions and then see what the impact is. Something to consider.
this is early days in this bylaws. We'll see if they come back with references and take it from there. I think would be the good way to go. So I will ask the question, all in favor? And
I'll lose a second part. I'm opposed.
Yeah, Councilor Morris and Wayne.
No. Fast and one.
Fast, right?
So I'm the council refer bylaw number 581/2022 as amended to the Islands Trust, Regard to Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee, and to a public open house.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so we're going to that according on the chair of Metro Vancouver Board resubmitted to Metro 2050 for acceptance by effective
Local governments dated May 3rd, 2022. There's a recommendation there. Does anybody want to speak to that? We're not actually one of these affected local governments, but
I'd just like to say, whoever did all the drafting, I think Alton was involved. Really nicely done. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, David.
So do you want to read the recommendation?
No, it's too long.
Whereas council has reviewed and responded to Metro Vancouver's draft regional growth strategy, Metro 2050, as outlined in council's letter to Chair Dollywall dated November 24, 2021. And whereas Bowen Municipality pursuant to the Islands Trust Act is not a signatory to Metro Vancouver's regional growth strategy, but recognizes its significance, therefore be it resolved that Bowen Municipality supports Metro Vancouver's regional growth strategy, Metro 2050.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, we're going to move down to Dr. Theo Patterson and Dr. Brianna Turner, University of Victoria, read a survey investigating the psychological impacts of COVID-19 on rural and remote British Columbians, dated May 12, 2022. Does anybody want to talk to this, or it's pretty self-explanatory?
I've been going back and forth with Hope a little bit on this one. I have a little trouble with the words authorized staff to participate. When I read that, I meant, oh, the staff's going to fill out the survey. So I suggest that we insert after the word participate, the words as requested, which because in the whereas we've been requested to disseminate information.
That's a good call.
Could we just say help disseminate information about?
Oh, that's even better.
Okay. Oh, you got that one? Of course you did. And any other changes on that recommendation?
No, I don't.
Rob?
Go ahead, Maureen.
I'm just a little puzzled as to why this ended up on our council agenda. It's ended off.
Liam. Throwing you under the bus.
Oh,
He didn't want to do it.
Well, the request came to me and I circulated it to staff to ask like, what to do with this type of thing. And I guess past requests have come to council to participate in surveys and the like. And so, I just wasn't sure whether this is something that we as a municipality would endorse or, whether there's no reason why these researchers couldn't reach out to a community on their own. But whether or not the municipality would be supportive of that. New to me,
Like, I think they want to funnel it through the municipality.
We might want to make a phone call. Have you talked to them?
No,
So just to.
it's really about them reaching out to the community and then they're seeking municipal government level support for that outreach to those.
Yeah, but somebody, you're gonna go onto a website and fill out a survey or something, I guess.
Yeah.
I just,
People have to know that we support this survey.
well, so I just thought we might want to do a little bit of background due diligence. But just,
No, they don't have to answer the survey.
but.
Yeah, I read their bios.
Oh, okay, yeah, but
I
I
read
mean,
up on the programming and
Okay.
they're legitimate and it sounds,
okay.
and they've been, yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, no, I don't mind reading this out. I think it's great you're doing this work. This whole issue, it's been 2.5 years and it's been really, really rough on a lot of people in the community. And it still really is really rough on people. And I think that it's good that we're looking at these kind of issues and so that it can inform, down the road of what worked, what didn't work. So I think it's very valuable research. And I think it's great that it got put on here and that they're respectful in asking us and for cooperation. So do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, whereas council has received a request from the University of Victoria seeking Bowen Island's participation in a study of the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on British Columbia rural and remote communities. And whereas the research team is requesting that Bowen participate by distributing information via
I think we're
newsletter.
going to change that little part. What's the next bit?
Oh, sorry, via newsletter and e-communications about the survey to Bowen Island community. Therefore, be it resolved that council authorize
Staff to send the information as requested by the University of Victoria's survey.
Thank you, and I'll move now.
Okay. Second. Further discussion?
Could I ask that in the text
Yeah.
clause that their names be included? Received a request from Dr. Patterson and Dr. Turner. Lanes.
Thanks.
So I'll ask a question. All in favor of the amended recommendation? Terrific, thank you. Unanimous. Move on to reports, committees, commissions. And minutes of the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee meeting held March 3rd, 2022. Deferred from March 23rd, council meeting. Oh, okay, so we missed that one.
We deferred it because Councillor Hawking wasn't here to speak.
That's correct.
And then I forgot to put them back on. Hence the delay, my bad.
Okay, I'll speak to this. So I hope everybody just flipped through the letter that was in the report. Like the Garden Club has done really good work on this. They produced pretty great videos on water conservation using their escaping and water collection devices like rooftop capture and so on. So there is, we had to look at it at this committee, and then why isn't the municipality taking leadership on this? And so that's really where this came from. Now, I know that we've got a handful of months left in this council, and this is not in the planning list of things that our staff is working on right now. But there's one other thing in here, and I'm not seeing it in this, although I know it was there when I read this, and this was about pricing, variable pricing, conservation pricing.
I think I mentioned that.
Yeah, but I saw it earlier, but I'm not seeing it in this.
Being discussed at the water system, so maybe that's where you saw.
Maybe I saw that. Okay, so I'll leave that for now.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, really, the Environment Committee is asking for municipal leadership on this. We've talked about this for a fair while, that we should be, for both fire protection and for outdoor watering. It's really great if you've got your own supply of water because you don't need to use perfectly treated water to fight fires or to put on your garden. It can be collected in a way. So I'm not sure, how council wants to respond to this. Okay.
Finish?
Yeah, sure.
Allison?
Well, I guess the first problem is, except for rezonings, we can't require somebody at a building permit stage to do any of this stuff. So that's.
But we can put it in the bylaw. Oh, no, we can't. We can do that.
The way, maybe,
Daniel and I spoke about this, and there may be a way that we can.
Yeah.
Actually require somebody at the building permit stage to.
I think you can do it through a development permit for water conservation. So there can be a development permit area.
So you've made the whole island a development permit area for water conservation.
Yeah, I mean, or specific areas where there's known to be water.
It should like if it was similar way that we have the CD zones.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be, there's certain water districts that we know we have issues with water. New development within this water district. Have certain things and that can be done as well.
So I guess I was thinking maybe as a first step, I was looking at the water guidelines for watering and sprinkling for Metro.
Yeah.
And they're quite different from what we've got right now. So maybe we should just start by promoting those. Because it talks about watering only in the mornings and things like that.
Maximum.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Pretty stringent. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I would support that kind of action. I think we'd have to do something as council to adopt new guidelines, because I remember we adopted the earlier ones, right?
Yeah.
Back in the previous council. But I wanted to point out that our official community plan does include policy 302, which is the municipality will encourage the inclusion of tanks, cisterns, and reservoirs for rainwater storage to supplement water supply for individual or group household use and fire protection, and that roofs be designed to accommodate rainwater collection. That's 302, and 303, which is all catchment areas of community water supply systems and significant concentrations of individual water supply systems should be designated as development permit areas for the purposes of collecting the supply and quality of, that's potable water, but still it speaks to the development permit area bit. And I can say Cowan Point has one of these development permit areas so that each house is plumbed so that it can collect roof water and put it into a cistern and run it through the toilets. So, that is in place. They don't have to do it, but the houses have to be built that way. So there is support for this in our official community plan. And I think we should be going to some kind of more water conservation.
Yeah, I agree, whether it's in the plan or not, we should be doing it, and I sort of thought that it should be in all future building permits, but we can't do that, so we got to find another way around it. Rob?
Yeah, just a general comment. I mean, I totally support water conservation. I don't know about the water collection, making it, I mean, that adds expense to houses, which raises building costs, which means less affordability. And I know I have tanks that get filled by a lake, so I don't need to water, I'm collecting rainwater, you're gonna fill the tanks in October 1st, and they're gonna sit for 7 months, and then you're gonna empty it on the first heat wave, and it's never gonna fill up again, right? So I don't like the prescriptive nature of, we're gonna put this in building design code. I mean, I think there's lots of ways having a natural garden and just not watering at all, or no garden, it's probably the best way to go. So I think this needs to be looked at a lot more, and I'm hesitant to take on any more work right now at the end of our term. We got so much going on.
It is very complicated. It's not as easy as Any other comments on this?
Yeah, just trying to pick up on this with this, someone who needs water.
Yeah.
I take the point, it is more complicated, and I don't think this is a one size fits all teacher. And I hate to say this, but I think this is something we should defer because it needs more serious consideration. We can't just ram this in. It sounds great. Oh yes, let's do this, put water bus here and put reservoirs here. But no, the reality is that's not how it works. The fundamental premise is absolutely correct. We need somehow to work around our various systems to have ways to preserve and reserve water. I'm frankly just not sure right now what the best way of doing that is. I don't, we're taking all everything that's been said. So I hope this issue will not get lost. And I'm not quite sure how we keep it alive while we work our way around it, because it's worth consideration. How do we, in our new construction, retrofitting is suited, but in new construction, how do we build in water collection? And to Councillor Wyman's point, I think it's very hard to do that without making the construction slightly more expensive. But that is surely the time to do it. It is at the construction, because I cannot think, I think most people around this table would agree that retrofitting this is extremely complicated, difficult, except in the most basic form of simple water catchment. Water. So I don't know. Is it something, Daniel? Do you think that its time is coming soon for new construction to affect water catchment as part of the construction?
It seems to be something that comes up, yeah, sort of at the end of every summer, and then it moves up very.
It goes away.
But I didn't see it as like on my radar for a little while. This is but it is that trade-off of, increased water conservation, but then how much, and so what's effective. Yeah, how much cost is it adding to construction?
Well, maybe as a first step, we ask so we can descend. Do we have to actually recommend that the Metro Vancouver guidelines be adopted, or can we just?
We adopted them, but apparently we have not updated them.
Yeah, they changed.
So
We need another.
I don't think so. We adopted the guidelines. Not the specific wording of the guidelines.
Yeah, I remember we did that, and we have that's what's on our website for recommended water usage. But they substantially updated them, and they're much more stringent, once a week for your lawn and stuff like that. So
we should probably look at how they're thing too.
figure that out for the ECAC.
Yeah, well, unfortunately.
I'll just speak to, like, I agree, except Maureen had her hand up.
No, carry on.
Okay. I think we're all agreeing that this is useful, it's something we should do, but I agree with the point the two of you made that, it depends on the house, it depends on the situation, and it's a bit complicated, and we should do it carefully and do it well. And, we've only got a couple of months left, and everybody's super busy, so probably not the time to try something new right now. Point, but I take Michael's point, I don't know how to keep it alive. I'm not sure. So I've got an idea maybe.
Well, I wonder if we might not want to do two things, because we are in a climate emergency and we have had some pretty amazing droughts. 2015, I think, was the strongest one, where people's wells that had never run dry were running dry. And what we could do is recommend the incoming council take this on through our strategic planning process, or through a motion that we passed tonight. And we could request staff to check about whether, or come back with recommendations about water conservation guidelines from Metro Vancouver, and whether that was still a good fit with what we were advising the community, and a good fit for the community.
Was that Sophie that was doing that study, or?
No,
Where did that
we
come from?
posted them on the website, but I have no idea. I could just say request staff. Yeah, but they're not the new ones that Metro has. They're quite different.
Okay.
It'd be good
Maybe
to see
that's a
the
good
motion
start,
that
just to
passed.
see,
Well, yeah,
get them updated.
We can simply look and see.
Yeah.
So we'll look and see.
I move that we request staff to check into the wording of the motion that passed originally regarding water conservation. Do you have something there?
No, I'm trying to find it, but I can't find it.
Yeah, I was doing that too. I was looking in the,
We can find it and bring that back.
okay, we don't need a resolution for that?
No.
Okay.
My point was the things that we actually are doing, although they're not under the umbrella of water conservation, collection, storage, building, design. One is that there are significant storage improvements that are being funded for municipal water systems. So that's advancement. And the other, I don't know if this is being implemented, but I hope it is, the differential fees, the adjustment to the fee schedule. And if anything will function as a water conservation measure, it will be more expensive water.
One of the best tools we have.
The downside to that and putting too much weight on the pricing at the higher levels to operate your system is people then cut back and don't pay because of the higher rates, because they're not using that much water. And all of a sudden you get to the end of the year and you haven't collected the use rates, what you need to operate the system.
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
You would be conserving water.
Yeah, well, that's a great discussion. We're all on the same track. It takes a while to get to where we need to get there. Have you got enough there, Hope, to carry on that one? Okay, thank you. We're going to move down to a new business, which is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and that's over to you, Lena.
So it's fairly straightforward recommendation, and it's to similar to last year, to recognize the September 30th as the day of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Was established as a federal statutory holiday, but not recognized by the province of BC at this time as a statutory holiday, but rather as an employee holiday. And so with the help of Councillor Morris, we revised the recommendation to read whereas the federal government establishes a statutory holiday to recognize September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and whereas Bowen Island Municipality wishes to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families and communities, and acknowledges that commemoration of the tragic and painful history and ongoing impacts of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. Therefore, be it resolved that Council of Bowen Island Municipality wishes to acknowledge September 30th as a general holiday and direct staff to amend the Bowen Island Municipal Personnel Policy to include this additional holiday.
Allison, you can move that since it's yours.
Oh, no, you can't move it. I'll move it.
Okay. And second.
No, I got some,
I'll second it.
because for me, this wasn't a straightforward sort of decision. I had a
Okay.
spirited comment about this. I just want to say a couple of things.
Okay.
First off, it is right now a holiday for our staff, and it's more. Did we make it a holiday last year?
As a one-off, it wasn't made, we didn't make a change to the personnel policy to recognize it as a ongoing holiday.
So it was just as a one-time.
Yeah. And so what we're putting forward here now is the recognition that the holiday is ongoing. That would be captured in the personnel policy as such.
So, my issue on this, and I've expressed similar gains with our EDI policies, moving forward. And I have no problem with the national holiday. I think we should. And I think, these national holidays need to really sort of move us in a positive direction. That's my number one thing with this. And, you know, it's, and I think looking at history, you know, history can be something that, you know, can hold you back, or it can inform you and move you into the future into positive territories where you make, where things get better. And I've, you know, I don't know if you watched the news yesterday. Basically, Trudeau was escorted out of Kamloops and heckled by people that were found. They were not happy with the treatment of reconciliation process, where it was moving and the focus, and they felt it was disingenuous. You know, when this holiday started last year, they had to fly him back from what was he, surfing into Tofino on his DC, and, you know, to apologize to people. So for me, what's important here is that when we recognize our history and where we're moving towards, we do so in a productive way. And I don't see a lot of productivity lately. I think there's been a lot of division in the community. You know, we saw the church burning happening, which wasn't good. You know, there's a lot of focus on, you know, salt and burial grounds and residential schools and all this. And I want to see some focus personally on how we're going to work together productively as communities and move forward in a positive direction. So, you know, when it says, you know, it's an important component, there's a lot of components, but I would like to see more positivity. And I frankly right now don't think the messaging, especially from the federal government, and what's sort of been some of the results lately, and how this is a very hot button issue right now. I've spoken with a lot of people, Aboriginal individuals that do not agree with some of these things that are being put forward because they find them disingenuous, right? And, you know, and I was actually challenged with the climate change emergency as well. I totally support, you know, that as a topic, but just saying it and doing it a lot of times stops people from really putting forward the effort and actually just doing it and moving forward in a positive direction. So I'm not too keen on this. I don't think we as a municipality should be jumping into this area. I don't think it's our job. And I think it's super complicated. And I think a lot of times, you know, with the best laid out intentions, you can actually create a lot of negativity. And I've seen a lot of that negativity. And I'm worried that we're just sort of going along with this, you know, and it all sounds good, but that it actually doesn't move us in a positive direction. So I don't think we should be getting into this. I have no problem with the holiday. I think we need more holidays for our staff. I think people work way too hard right now, but not sort of within this realm right now. And so that's why I'm not going to support it. Not that I don't think there's lots of issues that we need to resolve, but I just don't see, you know, how that and with this wording moves us in positive.
I hear what you're saying, but we got to keep the politics out of it. I mean,
exactly. I totally agree. We need to keep the politics out of it.
So
it's not a bad thing.
if we, you know, I guess my initial reaction was that we should be recognizing Orange Shirt Day. And therefore actually having some training and here and wearing an orange shirt and just that kind of, you know, sort of like Pink Shirt Day. Rather than giving everybody a holiday in that case, they wouldn't necessarily do the proper, you know, are we actually accomplishing anything?
Say it's very political, but
So where are we, if it's about federal government, what's our own provincial government edict? So the provincial government takes it as an employee holiday, but it's not a statutory holiday. And almost every other municipal and regional district government takes it as a holiday. All the banks which are regulated by the federal legislation are taken as a holiday.
Okay, is it as a staff holiday or a statutory? What's
Statutory holidays.
Same sort of thing. So the federal government is a statutory holiday and so the banks take it.
Yeah.
So the provincial government doesn't recognize it as a statutory holiday. They recognize it as an employee holiday. So
to the point that they using it as a staff holiday does take some of the the formality out of it whilst there are the many issues hopefully work their way through the system. Fact is, we're giving our people an extra day off on this one. Are we going to call it statutory or are we going to call it a staff holiday?
It's a staff holiday.
General holiday is our personnel policy.
I was stumbling on the statutory.
Could you reread the last clause in
It's
this?
on your,
No, it's not.
Page 2.
That page,
On table.
On the back, yeah.
It starts at 11.1. On the first page and then flips over to the back. So, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of Bowen Island Municipality wishes to acknowledge September 30th as a general holiday and direct staff to amend the BIM personnel policy to include this addition. Yeah, so we removed the statute.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, and I didn't see that holiday.
Yeah, it was fairly much.
Okay, sorry, Gary.
No problem. Maureen, you had your hand up. Did you get?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about just simply in that last clause, wishes to acknowledge September the 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation for the Church Day. Keep it there.
well, then we're not creating a holiday.
And direct staff to amend the BIM personnel policy to include this additional
As a general holiday, that's what
as a general.
I support that.
I mean, I have no problem with the last part of this sheet here with the therefore be resolved account. Like, I have no issue with that. I don't like the lead up to it. And I don't like the whereas. I don't think that is appropriate for us to begin with. That's my issue. So if I'm voting just on the back end of this, I have no problem with that. But this other part here, I can't. So however you want to read it up, but I have no problem with the bottom.
So do we have a revised motion on the table?
So therefore be it resolved that Council wishes to acknowledge September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and recognizes it as a general holiday and direct staff to amend the BIM personnel policy to include this additional holiday.
How about if we just leave the words therefore off of it and Councillor Wyman can vote in favor?
Well, no, you've got to get rid of all the whereas.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could just take out all the preamble.
Yeah.
Because it's in the last part now. So if it just begins.
Part of it.
The first whereas are a context piece, so they're just.
It's the call.
Okay.
So what we do is sound
Start
like,
with be it resolved. And you're deleting all the whereases?
Well, you can leave the first whereas and then delete the other. Second one.
I really kind of like those lyrics.
I worked really hard on those.
Yeah. I'd like to move the motion with the whereas as read. So maybe could you read the whole thing? So we're all clear on what we're going on?
Absolutely. Whereas the federal government established a statutory holiday to recognize September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, or Shirt Day, and whereas Bowen Island Municipality wishes to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools, families, and communities, and acknowledge that the commemoration of the tragic and painful history and ongoing impacts of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. Therefore, be it resolved, the Council of the Bowen Island Municipality wishes to acknowledge September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and recognizes it as a general holiday, and further direct staff to amend the BIM personnel policy to include this additional holiday.
I move that. Can we throw the word general in front of holiday?
It is
It's additional general holiday. Because we've got two kinds of holidays in the first place. And would it make it clearer if we threw in the words federal in front of statutory in the first whereas?
Whereas the federal government established a federal statutory holiday?
Because it only applies to federally incorporated entities.
No, that's all I can do, yeah.
Well, it doesn't harm the motion. I'm just looking at you guys,
It's your motion.
yeah, oh, that's okay with me, as the mover, I don't think there's a secondary yet.
Okay, any further discussion? That's good. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Councilor Lane. All right. 11.2 is proclamation of the year of the Sailor Sea. Bonnie, is Bonnie? Oh, there she is. Look at that. Wow. Bonnie Brokenshire, Manager of Environment and Parks Planning. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. And I just wanted to elaborate a bit more on what Tasha and Emma and Simran spoke about, or I guess it was Emma who spoke, but Tasha and Simran were supporting her tonight. As Emma presented, the intent of the Year of the Salish Sea initiative. The initiative was developed as one response to issues facing the Salish Sea, such as fragmented ocean governments, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss caused by climate change. The Year of the Salish Sea aligns with the UN Ocean Decade and the UN Decade on Restoration and the UNESCO Katsum Howe Sound Biosphere Initiative, which Council has endorsed. And it fits with BIM's climate action strategy with respect to reducing atmospheric GHGs by preserving blue carbon sinks and cycling in our marine environment. To date, 4 local governing bodies have passed the Year of the Salish Sea motions, declaring June 8th, 2022 to June 7th, 2023 as the Year of the Salish Sea. Those are the City of Vancouver, City of Richmond, Town of Gibsons, and Islands Trust Council. BIM staff continues to be involved with marine conservation, education, and restoration projects. The Year of the Salish Sea will help BIM highlight some of our marine stewardship work. Staff looks forward to liaising with jurisdictions over the next year and reporting back to Council near the end of the Year of the Salish Sea about the positive restorative actions that took place. So that brings me to the recommendation that's in Council's agenda package, and the recommendation reads that Bowen Island Municipality support the Simon Fraser University Fall 2021 Semester in Dialogue Cohort recommendation to proclaim June 8th, 2022 to June 7th, 2023 as the Year of the Salish Sea, thereby joining other government bodies, organizations, and community groups in a collective effort to improve the health and management of the Salish Sea.
Move that.
Second.
Got David over there.
Okay.
And, okay, further discussion? All right, I'll ask a question, all in favor? Aye, that's unanimous, thank you.
Were the 3 ladies that spoke to us
Yeah.
tonight, the 3 that presented at the House Sound Forum? Thought so, thank you. No, they presented at Islands Trust. Oh, okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
we had 3 ladies, yeah.
Those were Capilano College students at the
Cap College.
at the community forum.
Thank you, Bonnie.
And Canada Post just came out with new stamps and danger,
Oh, that's awesome.
which includes northern bottlenose, which is in the Atlantic.
Well, what do you expect from an Eastern North?
But it does include orca and humpback.
That means the price of postage has gone up.
That's exactly.
No, those are the ones that keep their value. You could buy a whole bunch of them.
Managers.
Yeah. Well, no, the ones that are the regular. Yeah, we don't need.
Okay, let's try to move on. 11.3, CAO update, over to you. Thank you.
That was all I had.
That was it, stamps.
Yeah, keep it short and simple.
Okay, update to council on Metro Vancouver business, Metro Vancouver Director, David Hoffman.
Yeah, a couple of things, Climate Action Committee. So not sure everybody knows, but Metro Vancouver can regulate for pollutants that have, direct harm to health. But Metro Vancouver is also trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Number 2 in the region is buildings. And so they're trying to look at how do we reduce emissions from buildings. And one of the particularly tricky ones is big old buildings, hospitals. I wonder if you do. And so anyway, they just looking at an engagement process to do something which is entirely different within their ability to regulate, and that is actually to regulate CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So for large buildings, so they're just at the start, their engagement on regulating greenhouse gas emissions from large buildings. I don't think of any of our buildings would qualify as a large building. We're getting close, but probably not quite. So it probably doesn't directly inform us, but or apply to us. But it's really interesting that they're looking at the ability to regulate CO2 emissions, not just direct pollutants. There was also a large discussion about LNG. So there's the Tilbury LNG facility just kind of across from in between Delta and Richmond, and they want to expand it significantly. And so there was presentations from a delegation from the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment in opposition, health effects, climate change, and then invited presentation from Fortis in favor, Delta, not sure, Richmond opposed. But it was an interesting discussion, a lot of the same things that we're talking about here, narrow passageway, ships turning around, but there are also some significant advantages. One of the problems with shipping is the sulfur in the fuel. And you either get the pollution coming out of the stack or you try to clean it, which means you're dumping it into the ocean. And if you're using LNG as a fuel instead, it's much cleaner. It doesn't have the sulfur. So, there's a lot of puts and takes, just like in some of the other arguments. But anyway, it was an interesting discussion. Also, I was in Indigenous Relations Committee, and one of the reports was quite interesting. You're probably all familiar with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and then the provincial government's DRIPA Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act. And so Metro Vancouver so then BC government came in with an action plan. Okay, what on earth do we do about this? And they've just got an action plan. So Metro Vancouver reviewed what this means for local governments. And so if anyone is interested to have a look at that, it's a report. I could just send me an email and I'll send you the link to the report so you can read.
Thank you.
I didn't see anything with immediate direct impact on Bowen, but there's certainly some things for local governments and regional governments as well to look at. Okay. Right. So that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you. We want to update the Council on Island Trust business. Island Trust Municipal Trust is fast and Kale.
I can make it really short because we don't have any meetings between this meeting. And I see we're in about 3 weeks away from the next meeting. Yeah, so I'm happy to hand over to my colleague here because it's just 3 weeks. I have other things in my diary, but not Islands Trust meetings for the next 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you. My calendar is full of them. So today I was in Islands Trust Conservancy Board meeting this morning. It's wonderful to be protecting green spaces on different islands. And so that was today. I think we're up to 177 properties now across the islands that are protected. And then tomorrow I will be at Executive Committee where we're looking at Hornby Island one's bylaws and starting to plan the June Trust Council, which will be an online electronic Trust Council again. And so just to let you know that planning is in the works, and I'm going to ask Hope to include the Heron newsletter in the next agenda so that the public can see it. We got hard copies in our box, but that seems to be the best way that trustees are finding the Islands Trust Conservancy news to be easier to use coming out of the newsletter. We've changed things around at the Islands Trust Conservancy and hired more communication staff, partly because we're finding that the fund development side of things is working. So one of the things we did today was, oh, that's closed agenda. I can't talk about it. Sorry. I'll find out later, but it's in the newsletter. It's about that $100,000 donation that somebody left us in their will. And how we're figuring out good things to do with that in partnership with others. And I just want to point you to 12.3 in the agenda. This is the Community Stewardship Award nominees are announced. We're switching from doing it every year, which we used to do before the pandemic, to now just, I think, once a term. in the final term. So this is the candidates, and there's one from Bowen Island here. I'll be happy to let you know that I recused myself because Will Husby has been nominated by Bob Turner, I believe. And but I didn't make any comment because he's my husband, for anybody who's listening. Okay, so that's yeah. That's my report.
All right, thanks, Sue. And we'll move on to the update to council on the Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meeting.
We did meet on the 18th, and included in your agenda packet is a link to the package.
It wouldn't open.
It opens in the PDF.
Couldn't open.
Well, I can send it to you.
Yeah.
It's there. The principal piece in the agenda package is the annual report. Also in park, but I encourage you to take a look at them. Bottom line is that Metro Parks saw another significant increase, 37% year-over-year, which is massive. People are just connecting with nature all over the place. They will be reviewing, the committee will be reviewing the building strategy for all of the building assets throughout the park system, from the outhouses to Minikado Lodge, which is a lovely venue for weddings. Lots of buildings throughout the system in various states of repair. So they have been working on this for a while, and this is their document where they not only count up how much it's going to cost to bring buildings up to standard, but also made some hard decisions about what's going to happen with some of them. With Davy's Orchard, as we know, those cottages will be restored. And I'm actually surprised that the work has not begun already. Liam, are you aware of start dates for? Last I had heard was April, and it's now May.
We did talk to them. I should check back with them about coming to council to do a route status update.
That would be helpful. They also at the committee shared some more details about what's going on with Belcarra, and there'll be a formal report on Belcarra cabins at next week, in part because there's a significant millions, much more than being spent on Bowen, for a number of cabins that will essentially be non-functional, will be display, exterior display only. So there are questions about value for money being asked, quite serious questions. So that's a bit for Metro Parks, but I just wanted to mention as a side note, I also attend meetings of the North Shore Standing Committee on Substance Use, and we're meeting next Wednesday. Yes, and Vancouver Coastal Health will be making a presentation on emergency response and harm reduction, substance use in priority population. And they'll have overdose data for all of the North Shore communities, and also for throughout Vancouver Coastal Health. So there may be some points that I'll bring back to council as an agenda item, depending on how that conversation goes. There are representatives on that committee from throughout essentially sea to sky. So for next meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, Mike. And council on Translate Mayor's Council meetings, Councillor.
We haven't met a meeting on Thursday, and now we're going to be fairly full agenda. A joint meeting with the Translate Board, where they will receive and approve the investment plan, and then the mayor's council will be asked to approve it as well. So that's the one that the consultation is just finished on. So final draft. And then the other is the public meeting is getting a presentation on the transit performance and handy dart use and things like that. So that's going to be for 2021. So that'll be interesting. And I haven't waded through the file yet to find our route performance. And also, there's been a lot of conversation going on about the extent of the UBC. Sure, with some costing and some further costing information.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think Councillor Fast earlier, the delegate. Objection on table. I'm wondering if now.
Allowed under a procedure by law, motion is supposed to be presented to council.
Notice the motion is best practice, but unless the council is willing to accept the waiver of the notice of motion, then we can proceed.
Is it required unanimous?
No, I don't believe so. I think it's 2/3 majority vote. I'm gonna double check.
Is it time sensitive motion or is it something we can just put on the next agenda?
We could put on the next agenda if people want. This is just it's in our agenda. It's actually 12.5. It's the motion that we passed in 2020, just repacking it again. That I read.
Notice of intent to have that one.
Well, no, there wasn't, except that we did accept the delegation. And we had a lot of people interested in it. And I've tried notice of motion before and I wasn't allowed to, it didn't go anywhere. So I don't see anybody else doing notices of
David, I think, we could do notice of motion, we could do it next week, but then, it was discussed tonight, we had people come tonight. We don't need a staff report on it, I don't think, and I don't want staff to have to do a report on it, so why not do it tonight?
Yeah, it's stuff.
Okay, I'm good to it. Topic raised tonight. We won't have any more information next week.
and it's in our.
Timing was a little appropriate last time. So
But it's in our agenda. Sorry, I'm just looking for it. I'm in the wrong version.
The previous motions were directing staff to submit.
The council directs staff to communicate the provincial environmental assessment office at Bowen municipality.
They both direct staff to submit stuff.
The second one.
When I was doing.
Yeah.
The council directs staff to communicate to the provincial environmental assessment office that Bowen municipality continues to not support the Woodfibre LNG project.
I move that.
May I just make one recommendation? I believe at that point in time, they were seeking input. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, sort of. Yes, it was at that point, it was the environmental assessment department that was had been seeking input, and that we did ask for special permission to submit to, because we were supposed to provide it, but staff hadn't been alerted. If we wanted to, we could write to the provincial government to advise them of our concerns instead. Or we have this is why I was going to keep it simple and just repeat the same one. And that's, I think that's appropriate because I brought up the points about the environmental assessment hadn't included whales and dolphins and glass sponges and biosphere reserve and things like that. So that's, I would just write to them again and repeat, continue opposition. So I move that.
Could we just put in an again or something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
to communicate again to the provincial.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a motion that we've passed. The principle that we don't agree has already been stated. Well, and I find it, I find it at odds with this in terms of they came here to make a presentation. We asked questions, and fair enough, and people had a chance, and we had a chance to ask the questions that we wanted. It was a brief 15-minute presentation with a backup slideshow. But now we want to rehash something we've already said, and I'm quite happy with what we've already said, and I just don't feel pleased that we would take this opportunity to go through the whole thing. It just doesn't seem very fitting to me. And if there are new things that have taken place since then we should take time to think about that and rephrase why we don't approve if things have changed since the original motion. So it's not that I don't support it. I just don't find it attractive. Find it rehashed in this form, and it doesn't feel right somehow.
Would it move it out of the realm of rehashing to add in to communicate again to the Provincial Environmental Assessment Office and to Woodfibre LNG that Bowen Island municipality? And that makes it more responsive to the presentation. For support.
Councilor Nicholson, can you please repeat that?
I did that in and Woodfibre LNG that Bowen Island municipality continues to not support.
Was that unanimous last time?
Oh,
No, you were against.
Just me?
you and I.
Oh. I don't know.
I think it's overkill personally, but
What's that?
I think it's overkill. Why do we have to do this?
Almost bad manners somehow.
Well, it does seem out of. If we're not being asked to.
Thank you,
We
appropriate.
just had a presentation and I know we'll stand on it. I also want to make sure that like we're being processed proper with our outside agencies and, you know, and so it's like my suggestion would be if there is a really good motion to go forward, to think a bit about it and bring it up at the next one. And then put that motion forward instead of sort of this on the fly. And I'm a bit uncomfortable in certain aspects, and a couple of people are comfortable, but we support the general tenure of where it's going. So,
Well, they know we're against it. There's absolutely no question about that. Reinforcing it isn't gonna change it. Anyway.
I mean, what we can also do is just send something. If we really want to send something, just send it to private LNG. Thank you for the we want to let you know we still do not support this process, but we appreciate you coming down and keeping us in the loop on what's happening. You know, like that could be another one, right?
That keeps a dialogue open.
Keeps the dialogue open, but it still makes it very clear that listen, we're still not supporting.
Yeah. These people are not going to go away. They are real and they are here and they are present with us. And they came to make a presentation. It's almost as though we're jabbing them in the eye. It seems like we're impolite.
It's like we're just getting caught up in the whole thing here again.
So back to the procedure, so we can, council has to unanimously waive the notice requirements.
Well, I'm not waiving it, so.
Okay.
Notice come into play.
Right.
I think there's another audience for this as well that we haven't mentioned, which is our community. And I think that it's important that that message get out. So there's the province, there's Woodfibre, and there's members of our community, many of whom came here tonight. And we're looking for some statement from this council to affirm what its position was. And we can't because procedure. But we have that opportunity at the at the next council meeting. So I really look forward to seeing what is put forward then as a motion.
Yeah.
Do notice.
So it's well, going to, you know, the trouble with this is I agree with Rob's point. I agree with the following process, and I agree with being polite and continuing the conversation, but I also agree with Maureen that we've got our own audience to consider. But if we were going to send something back, and I think just sending a polite note back to them saying thank you for your presentation, but we don't blah blah. We have to have thought that out. We can't just
No, I agree.
We can't just say, oh, thanks for your presentation, but we don't like you. Go away. I mean, it has to be, have to have some substance to it.
It seems very reactive, is what I'm saying. Whereas it's not well enough thought out. And if we want to reinforce it, we have to reinforce it with some new data.
We have to provide some information.
Not just, just reminding people all the time.
And I don't want to ask staff to do that.
I'm not sure why we need to reinforce anything with
Okay.
good information.
I'll draft something and bring it to a future council meeting, probably the next one.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you. So 11.8 is to move to a closed meeting. The recommendation is the council move to a closed meeting following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 90-1 A and J of the community charter. And I will move that. Second to Rob. All in favor? Aye. You, Jonathan? Okay, I see it. Little link better made. And then we'll move into question period. Alex.
Anyone?
I don't know. No, I don't think Bobby's there. Oh, will we get anybody in there? Ava was there at one point.
Okay.
I am here. I'm still here.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
There I am.
Well, take Ava first. Do you have a question, Ava?
I have. It wouldn't be me if I wouldn't have any questions. Sue Ellen, I have a question to Sue Ellen. Of course, it's regarding the housing. And to be honest, it kind of irritates me that you always talk about rural living and protect the greenery. And as you said that the secondary suites should be allowed only on the bigger lots, but not on the smaller lots. Can I ask you how big your lot is?
I don't think that's
It's not really, it's not really appropriate.
Okay.
That question, yeah.
The problem is people with bigger lots on Bowen Island would definitely not agree to attach a secondary suite because they like their greenery, they like their privacy. People on Bowen who work hard, both parents, and live on small land are more happy and welcoming and helpful to build a secondary suite or a tiny home on the property to help with the housing to accommodate Bowen residents. For you, as you said, it looks like you don't agree with the small lots because it will take away the greenery. How much greenery was taken away by building those affordable housing at the corner of the Trunk and Miller Road? How many greenery got taken away by building the community hall and the new Muni Hall?
Yeah, your point is well taken, but let's find a different track. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so my question is, why is it so important right now to find excuses to help the people find homes on Bowen, just like Daniel proposed, lower the lot sizes, allow people, landowners, to put a secondary suite, put a tiny home on it, to help with the housing problem. Why it can't be approved? Why it needs to be still looked into it and talk about it and take decision? What is so hard to take a decision if a person with a smaller lot is willing to put a second house to it to share his garden with another person living in his yard?
This is, I don't like the way the direction this is going. We passed tonight that we're going to be able to put accommodations on smaller lots now.
No.
And that's go through the process.
First reading.
Just first reading, but the process has started. And it takes a long time. There's no question about it. It can't just.
How long?
Well, it's probably going to be before it goes through, probably 2 or 3 months.
When I was on the meeting last time, what was it, 3 weeks ago, was the talk where Daniel approached you guys to lower the sizes of the property permit that they can attach secondary suites. It's almost a month and there is still nothing decided.
This doesn't happen very fast. I can guarantee you.
What is so
that
hard
is actually quite fast.
There's a whole process we have to follow.
What kind of process?
I could send you.
Well, let's listen.
I'll send you a map that's on the timeline.
You know, people on Bowen don't have time. If you guys saw tonight evening, the general store is hiring. They don't have any workers. Who is going to work if we don't have any place to live? Because you guys need lots of time to decide if we will allow it or we not allow lower the size of the land.
Yeah, okay. Well, this question period and not council bashing period. So, and it's part of the process. Part of the process. No, nothing's decided
for years. You guys are
absolutely. I agree with you.
Years.
I agree with you 100%. But that's the process we have, and that's the one we use.
Not our choice.
Okay,
Not our choice.
Not our choice.
Are you going to be moving ahead when you see people who lose their homes, including me, camping in your municipality parking lot? Because you guys did nothing. You guys didn't help already for a month to solve the housing problem. Daniel approached you, gave suggestions, and you guys are no, we need to rethink it. If you're going to be camping in your parking lot, will you then listen?
Enough is enough. I will tell you that we are doing as much as we possibly can. And it's not as easy as you make it look. It's a lot of moving parts to this, and it's extraordinarily complicated. And I'm sorry you can't understand that, but I will say good night and thank you.
That's very funny.
Well, sorry, I haven't got the
are
answers.
happy to invest their own money to build a house on no cost of you. It doesn't cost you nothing. Just give them a permit. They will spend their own money to build a secondary suite on their property. Cost you zero. Why don't you want to allow it?
It's part of the process.
We're going through the process, and the process is set up in a legislative fashion by the provincial government. And we're following those procedures. And we're happy to walk you through that process and the timeline that it'll take, and that's the standard process that has to be followed. So happy to walk you through that. If you want to come down here, and Daniel and I can chat with you about that process.
And that's just the way it is. And it's not, no, it doesn't suit your situation, but that is the way it is, unfortunately. Sorry to say.
And then the other question was, somebody approached me at the gas station, and they said that when they moved here years back, there was no bylaw about property sizes for a secondary suite. And now when that family has finally money saved up to do a detached suite, suddenly there is the new bylaw that, oh, your land is not big enough. You actually can't build anything on it. When does that bylaw, I would like to know which year does that bylaw actually changed, where the numbers came up that this size of property, you can't build another home on it.
The bylaws originally, when I moved here in 1996, and they didn't get changed until 2007, said there was only one dwelling allowed per lot. In 2007, we allowed secondary suites. And then sometime later, we allowed detached residential. So the person that moved here obviously hadn't read the bylaws, because you could only have one dwelling on a lot up until about 2007.
Okay, no, I just said.
So we've improved the bylaws by allowing secondary suites and allowing detached residences. And the process takes, you gotta give first reading, you gotta wait at least a month to give second reading, you gotta have a public hearing, you've got to circulate it to the Allen's Trust for their approval. The fastest we ever did a rezoning was 6 months so that we could move into this building.
Okay. No, I just said to the person I'm gonna ask about it at the next meeting, because not lots of people feel comfortable to speak up. So.
You can always, like Liam says, you can always come down to the municipality. There's always somebody you can talk to here, but whether Daniel or Liam or whoever, get the answers.
Yeah. Okay. Okie dokie.
We're not taking this much time because we want to. Believe me.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good night.
Okay, night. All right, Alex.
All right.
An easy one.
Yeah. Let's see what I could do. I guess just start with general. One. So the old or the current secondary suite minimum lot size is old. And if this bylaw passes, would it be a common chart 0.2 or there's no limit?
No minimum.
No limit. Okay. And no residential guest accommodation,
Correct.
Which means B and B.
Okay, short-term rentals, you'd still be allowed a bed and breakfast.
Oh, okay, sure. All right, and then you could only have either a detached or not attached.
Yeah, I mean, that's current. You can only have one or the other, and it would stay.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's very sad. Thank you. And I think that's good. Does anyone want to say anything about Woodfibre presentation or?
It was pretty shallow, huh?
We're over time and electric is looking for us.
I think it got patched. Okay, thank you all.
I need a break.